my name is Claudia, and I work with bottom-up initiatives to engage citizens in cultural heritage. I started with IT projects when my professional career begins, and I did a lot of very basic work on IT and infrastructure for research institution. And then I kind of moved forward to GLAM because I understood that it's not about infrastructure anymore, but about the content, and it's very important to have this all heritage content online. And then I started to work on a project that really reached out to people. And this is the project I did with team in Centrum Cyfrowe, which is NGO organization, and it's a home for Creative Commons Poland. And so I don't have this very theoretical background like you guys who speak before me, but I realized that what I'm going to say about is not sharing authority, but shared authority. And so I need to correct my hashtags in presentation. So the goal of Open Monuments project was to engage citizens in using, reusing, correcting and collecting open data about heritage objects in Poland. We are building a database through our crowdsourcing platform. The platform itself, it's open sourced, and its code is available online on GitHub, and all the content on the platform is available under CC BY SA license. This is CC BY SA because of the Wikimedia stuff we use. Our starting point were data from official registry of monuments, historical objects and buildings in Poland. So Open Monuments isn't a startup project. So it has a quite long, I think, for a project like this, history of ups and downs, and most importantly of turning points. We started as a crowdsourcing project, one of the very first projects like this in Poland. And we were coming from these very high ideas of open government, and we had this thought in mind that everyone cares about heritage, and working on a project like that could be a very good example that could serve so many things. So, but we end up as a playing ground for cultural institution, and the platform itself became kind of tool for all of kinds of educational actions for cultural institution. So they use it as an educational tool or a tool to engage local communities. So I was asked to tell you about how it began, what we learned along the way. The project came from, so we were inspired by the Wikimedia photo contest, Wiki Love Monuments. I bet most of you have heard of it. And we were a part of that, and we saw a bigger potential in it. So we believed that this working on heritage could be a gateway experience to learn about this open government's idea of participation and shared authority as well. We also wanted to support advanced knowledge about heritage and historical sites, of course, but we had these big ideas in mind. So we started to talk with National Heritage Board of Poland, and somehow, I don't know still why, but somehow we managed to convince them to open up their database. And it was official registry, and it was very messy at the very beginning. The first data set contained around 70,000 records, so there was 70,000 information about monuments, and for each monument we had address, name, and date of creation, basically. And more most of these data, some of these data weren't accurate. Because, for example, when the communist era ended in Poland, a lot of small towns, or not, a lot of towns decided to rename their streets so it wouldn't be longer connected to these figures had in mind. So a lot of these data weren't accurate. So there was a great need to work on that. And the registry with only address without GPS coordinate weren't that useful, right? So we built a platform for people to engage and help us to correct this data and to collect new data. So one could add address, GPS coordinators, pictures, merit description, but also personal stories. And we launched the platform during Open Data Day in 2011, and it was called Open Monument Mass Action. So during that day, we managed to engage 5,000 people, but only or maybe not only, but 400 of them registered as users, and they are still active today. So we managed to work on 6,000 monuments and records. They were corrected, so they were corrected and completed as records, which turned out to be more than half of records that we managed to work on during the next 3 years. So about shared authority, we very deliberately made a decision not to define monument. So it was because we believed in common sense and the goodwill of people who were our volunteers who join us in a shared effort. And you need to do that. You need to trust people we work with. And we believe that it's important what's the monument that people want to register means to their community. And it's more important than that if it's recognized officially as a monument. And we hope that this kind of approach could bring something new to discussion about heritage, and it could make easier for people from different environments, like from academic, very professional historians, to talk to amateurs historians, and that could be some new into this discussion. And we never regret that decision, and we never had any abstractions. We found out very soon that open monuments started to live their own lives. Like, it's being used mostly as educational tool. And the process of learning and teaching in open monuments runs from the bottom up. It especially involves libraries, NGOs, and cultural animators. And the project became an educational tool regarding not only the monuments, but also technical issues, the basic rules of copyrights, and open licensing. Because in order to use the website, one must not only have necessary skills to use application and search engines, but also know where to find legitimate resources and how to publish under CC licensing, which is not so easy. It's not a basic knowledge. And understand heritage data and be able to check them and cross-check them and verify them. So it turned out that open monuments inspired training techniques for organizations working, for example, with seniors and other disadvantaged people in the digital world. So the time flew by, and we realized after 3 years that we have 1,500 registered and active users. And we had this feeling that a lot of things are happening all the time, that there's a lot of active people and active organizations that try to reach out to us. But at the same time, when we stopped, we realized that the database itself, it's not really growing so. accordingly to the number of people who are active. So keeping crowd like that interesting, it's really, really hard job. It can be really draining for organization depending on public resources and grounds. So we decided that it's time for self-evaluation and decided to do research, and we ran a survey among our users to find out who is involved with us and how they interact with our platform and our database, and are they satisfied in terms of user experience, or there are better things that could be done with it. So we found out, so we needed to change our minds about a couple things. So the first thing was, like, we had this thought of open government, right? But on the main website we have this button that allowed people to call alert about some monument. So when they push that button, and it would send us a message that there is a monument that requires special attention because it's really ruined, and it's meant to be working in small towns or but really no one used that button, like no one. And it turned out that wasn't working, and it turned out that most of our individual users were travelers and people who are traveling and taking pictures, not with smartphone, but with digital camera. So it wasn't really like they were traveling, taking picture and then uploading it, but they were like really crafting it. They did this picture, then they mastered it. And they simply cared about sharing, and they wanted to do something more with the things that they do while traveling. On the other hand, because those were the active user, and the passive users valued our platform because of the personal stories. So when we started, it wasn't so many commercial, not commercial applications that were supporting travelers, but along the years they emerged. Like now we have these Google Trips. So these personal stories, not concentrating on merit description, but personal stories, were our winning point over other applications like that. So we started brainstorming, and we decided to go local, to focus more on local communities, to gather more local stories like that. And because what we realized, our main problem was to reach out to a very broad audience, we realized that we need someone in between, someone who could be our kind of ambassador, and someone who is closer to those local communities. So we decided to invite cultural institutions, local cultural institutions, to work with us on projects that uses open monuments as a tool, as a core element of the project. So at the first round, we invite 7 institutions. We facilitated creative process around the ideas for project. We organized workshops on basic of copyright and CC licensing, on project management and evaluation, and also about communication skills. And for many of those institutions, it was the very first digital project they actually had. So it was a lot of ideas that emerged. So some institutions did printed guides prepared on materials that were added to open monuments with local communities. So they organized events to walk around the neighborhood and to take pictures together and then uploaded it to open monuments. They did this kind of summer walks, and they organized open monuments sprints that were taking place during the weekend, and then they organize a lot of family events as well, so city games, many things. And we thought that this experiment is really working. Like, we have this institution that really have some benefits from that, and we have, like, it's win-win situation. And on the top of that, the database is growing because of that. What was really a joy for me, that the project is really reusable. So it's not only like institution could use that as a tool, but also there were growing interest of tech startups that were interested in those kinds of data. Some of them are looking for innovative approach to engaged users. Some think that Open Monuments and projects like Wikimedia are working on for a couple years now. And there is still open discussion about how to cooperate with business effectively, fundraise for shared initiatives, which is constantly a major challenge when it comes to projects like ours. Projects like this have very often very short life. Like, you have this grant and you run it for 2 years, and then you try to fundraise for it for some more time, like half an hour, and then it's a ghost project in the web. So somehow we managed to avoid that, but it was really challenging, and it needed us to be focused and reevaluating all the time. So if Open Monuments is some kind of a success story, that's because we were focused on our audiences. So we were running these surveys, interview to get to know the audience better. And we were working with institutions in order to get closer, because we realized that we don't have the capacity to talk to all the people running just in one city, in the middle of a Poland, in the capital city, right? You cannot assume you can do that, because you can't. We were prepared to change the direction. We're not like afraid, okay, this idea just didn't work, and we were ready to shift from this ideological point of view, where the project was meant to be an example and proving a point about this, how open government can work. And we shifted that to a more practical approach, that we, at the end, we really thought that it serves people, and the openness is served as a tactic, not as a very principal goal or everything. And this is what I would call the shared authority, because being focused on our niche and about what it needs, constantly self-evaluating, doing research, surveys, interviews, using data institution already has in their possession. Being focused on those needs is the super serve our niche is a really way to work this through. And I have this paraphrase of the challenges that facing cultural institution. And the guy was saying probably about museum, but my gut tells me that it's really about any heritage institution. And I wanted to end on that note. Thank you.